So today, we're going to peel back the layers on a very specific type of person, the one who knows how to fix absolutely everything. You know exactly who I'm talking about. Maybe it's a friend of yours, or honestly, let's be real, maybe it's you. When disaster strikes, a leaking pipe, a corrupted hard drive, or a sudden emotional spiral, most people just freeze, or their hands start shaking while they're frantically Googling what to do. But not the fixer. They go completely quiet, no panic. They simply step right into the chaos and start untangling it. You become the 2 a.m. call for literally everyone in your life because you have this unique, quiet ability to just step into a mess while everyone else is totally paralyzed. But why? What actually separates the person who instantly takes control from the person who cries? Okay, let's dive into this. Part 1, the fixer's superpower.
Their
On the
nervous
surface,
system
this
doesn't
level
go
of
into
capability
shutdown.
looks
It
like
goes into
raw,
curiosity.
unteachable talent,
Bandura
right?
called
But to really
these
understand it,
mastery
we have to go back to
experiences
the
the most
1970s and
powerful
look at the
source of
research of
self-belief.
psychologist Albert Bandura. He identified this fascinating concept called self-efficacy. Now, to be clear, this isn't just your general sunshine and rainbows kind of optimism. It's incredibly specific. It is a highly trained nervous system response that says, hey, I have handled difficult things before, and this specific thing right in front of me, it's totally handleable. Bandura found that this belief alone completely changes how a person's brain processes a problem. It dictates how long they'll persist before throwing in the towel. When a fixer looks at a broken situation, their nervous system doesn't shut down. It actually shifts into a state of mild curiosity. But how do you actually get self-efficacy? Well, Bandura pointed to something he called mastery experiences. Think about the very first time a kid tries to fix something. They wiggle a loose wire on a broken toy, and suddenly the lamp turns on. Or they put pressure on a cut, and the bleeding actually stops. The purely tactile act of fixing that thing yourself does something downright magical. It completely rewires the brain's relationship to uncertainty. Suddenly, the world isn't just something that passively happens to them. It's something they can reach their own hands into and actively change. Honestly, doing it yourself is the most powerful builder of self-efficacy there is. And this brilliantly illustrates a related concept from psychologist Julian Rotter, the locus of control. Fixers sit very firmly on the internal side of this scale. They deeply, fundamentally believe their own actions determine outcomes, not luck or fate. This internal locus is actually one of the most protective psychological traits a human being can possibly have. It protects against stress, prevents your brain from going into shutdown mode, and makes you way less likely to develop depression when things inevitably go wrong. Because think about it, to the fixer, a broken thing isn't a tragedy. It's literally just a puzzle waiting to be solved. All right, let's transition to the next layer of the painting. Part 2, the childhood blueprint. Just a quick warning, we are going to look at where this operating system was actually built. The hard truth is, most of these people were not just born this way. This extreme self-reliance was forged in a very specific environment. For a lot of folks, fixing didn't start as a superpower at all, it started as a survival tactic. Imagine a child growing up in a home where the adults were overwhelmed, unreliable, or maybe just absent. If expressing a need was constantly met with irritation or dismissal, that child learns a very quiet but very powerful lesson. If you need something, you better get it yourself. Psychologists call this an avoidant attachment pattern. The child learns to completely suppress their own needs and becomes unnaturally good at managing things solo. They become the peacemaker, the problem solver, because stabilizing their environment was quite literally the only way they could feel safe. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the clear paradox of competence it creates in adulthood. We basically see two distinct types: healthy fixers and protective fixers. The healthy fixer does it out of genuine curiosity. They just love the process. And crucially, they can put the wrench down. They can comfortably let someone else take the lead. But the protective fixer, they are driven by the absolute primal fear of being helpless again. For them, letting someone else handle a problem feels genuinely dangerous. They physically cannot relax. They hover, they micromanage, all because trusting someone else triggers this old childhood whisper that says, they're going to drop the ball, they always do. Just do it yourself. Let's move into the darkest layer of the explainer. Part 3, the hidden emotional cost. I want you to consider what happens when the fixer themselves needs fixing. Seriously, what happens when the person who fixes everything is the one who is broken? When you spend your entire life being the reliable one, competence stops being just a handy skill. It becomes your entire identity. And an identity built entirely on self-sufficiency is terrifyingly fragile. It's not really a personality anymore. It's armor that you've worn for so long you completely forgot you even have it on. I read a story in our research about a person who called a plumber exactly once. The guy showed up late, he overcharged, and he actually fixed the wrong pipe. That was 15 years ago, and they haven't asked for help a single time since. That is the true fragility of self-sufficiency. It literally only takes one disappointment to reinforce those walls forever. And the hidden costs of this lifestyle are just staggering. Direct your attention to the list here. When you are the ultimate fixer, you inevitably attract people who are more than happy to just sit back and let you do everything. Slowly, without even realizing it, you start carrying weight that was never yours to carry in the first place. But the biggest hidden cost, and this is the real kicker, is that fixing others' external chaos is a brilliant, socially praised distraction from your own internal messes. It is so much easier to solve your friend's crisis than to sit alone in a quiet room with your own unresolved emotions. Eventually, this whole dynamic just breeds a quiet, slow burning resentment. You're completely exhausted, but you literally can't stop. And then, eventually, you hit the breaking point. You encounter a situation, a relationship, or a person that you simply cannot fix. And I know how deeply frustrating this is for you. You can see the solution perfectly. You give the most incredibly sound, perfect advice, and they just won't change. The hardest lesson for a fixer to learn is that fixing only works when the other person is actually ready. You cannot manufacture readiness for someone else. And when your usual bulletproof strategy fails, you are forced to just sit there in the intense, agonizing discomfort of your own powerlessness. So the crucial point is this: the most capable person in the room is sometimes the loneliest. You've trained everyone around you that you are always okay, always available, always holding it together perfectly. So naturally, they just stop asking how you are. You're surrounded by people who rely on you heavily, yet you feel completely unseen. You're profoundly lonely in your own strength. All right, let's shift the tone back up to the surface. Part 4, finding true balance. How do we actually update this childhood operating system? There is a way out of this gilded cage, I promise. Breaking the cycle doesn't mean you suddenly become cold or uncaring. And it doesn't necessarily mean going to years of therapy just to talk in circles. What it actually takes is a very specific corrective experience. You have to allow yourself to need help, actually ask for it, and have the bet pay off. Just once. You have to let someone else show up for you and do it imperfectly, but effectively. That single terrifying moment creates a crack in the old story that says dependency always equals disappointment. It finally proves that you can be vulnerable and still be entirely safe. Let's move to and see how this builds into a practical framework for everyday life. To find true balance and set some boundaries without losing the part of you that genuinely cares, your helpfulness has to shift from being an automatic anxious reflex to a totally intentional choice. Next time chaos erupts, just pause. Literally stop for a second. Ask yourself, is this actually mine to carry? Am I really helping here? Or am I just trying to control my own anxiety by controlling the outcome? You have to start trusting that other people can figure things out without you swooping in. Real strength isn't just about holding the entire world together. It's about giving yourself permission to just be human, to be messy, and to rest. I want to leave you with this one final thought. What would actually happen if you stopped fixing everything, just for a moment? What would fall apart? And more importantly, what might finally have the space to grow? Needing someone isn't the opposite of strength. Letting yourself be supported is quite literally one of the bravest things you can do. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, keep reflecting, and I'll see you next time.